I should have walked away the moment the body refused to go still. The glassy sand crunched under Ethan Cole's boots as the last heat shimmer bled out of the wreckage, his visor reading 112 degrees Fahrenheit and falling, the air still tasting like burnt circuitry and something metallic that didn't belong to any machine he'd ever stripped for parts. He kept his cutter low, not aimed, just ready, because the thing at his feet wasn't behaving like anything dead should. Its armor, if it was armor, shifted in slow, quiet pulses, faint lines of amber light threading beneath the surface like a heartbeat that didn't know it had ended. Stay down, he muttered, more out of habit than belief, and crouched just enough to see the fracture where his plasma arc had kissed its side, not a clean cut, not even deep, just enough to interrupt whatever system kept it upright. He hadn't meant to take it down, not really. It had moved first, fast, precise, like it already knew where he would step next. An instinct had filled the gap where thinking should have been. Now the wind dragged fine grains of crystallized sand across the plain in thin, whispering sheets, and for a second everything went quiet, too quiet, like the world had pulled back to watch. Ethan's suit pinged a soft warning, proximity anomaly, low-frequency emission detected. He frowned, tapped the side of his helmet. From what? No answer, just a new line of data crawling across his HUD. The signal wasn't coming from orbit, it wasn't environmental, it was coming from the body. His grip tightened. That's not funny, he said to no one, because salvage zones didn't joke. They broke, they collapsed, they burned, but they didn't call. The light beneath the alien surface brightened a fraction, then steadied, then shifted into a pattern, not random, not dying, deliberate, like a beacon choosing its words. Ethan felt it before he understood it, a pressure just behind his ribs, not pain, not yet, just awareness, like standing too close to a speaker you couldn't hear. He took a step back, then another, boots grinding into the hot glass. Okay, he breathed, that's new. His suit tried to tag the species and failed. Database mismatch, classification unresolved. Great, just great. He swept his gaze across the horizon, nothing but dunes and broken silhouettes of old installations half buried by years of storms. Empty, it should have been empty. Then his comms flickered, not a full signal, just a spike, sharp enough to sting his ears, and for a split second every indicator on his wrist went dark. Oxygen, temperature, nav, gone, then back again, unstable. Don't you do this to me, he snapped, slapping the casing like that would scare the glitch away. But the anomaly didn't fade, it grew. The air itself seemed to tighten, like a held breath stretching too long, and the signal, whatever it was, locked, directionally now, not a pulse, a line, straight up, straight out. His eyes followed it without meaning to, into the washed-out sky where nothing should have been visible at this hour, and yet something was there, a distortion, subtle, like heat-bending light over asphalt, only colder, sharper, descending. Ethan's heartbeat picked up, slow at first, then harder. No, he said under his breath, already calculating distances, angles, the nearest cover. A good 50 yards behind a ridge of fused debris, too far if whatever was coming decided to be fast. The body at his feet dimmed, as if its job was done, as if it had finished speaking, and that terrified him more than the movement, because it meant this wasn't random, this wasn't a dying reflex, this was a message answered. The distortion above resolved another degree, edges forming where there should be none. And Ethan realized with a cold clarity that settled deep in his chest, he hadn't just survived an encounter, he had triggered something, something precise, something personal, and whatever was arriving, wasn't coming for salvage. Do not move, the voice said, and it did not come from his comms, it came from everywhere at once, low, controlled, like gravity deciding to speak. Ethan froze mid-step, one boot half pressed into the glassy sand, breath caught somewhere between inhale and decision. The distortion above him folded inward without a sound, not a ship, not a drop pod. Something cleaner, something that did not need to announce itself, and then she was there, not descending, not landing, just present, close enough that the temperature around him dipped 3 degrees in less than a second. His visor flickered, recalibrating, failing, trying again. The figure stood tall, taller than any human by at least a foot, her silhouette sharp and impossible against the pale sky, armor flowing over her like liquid metal, not reflecting light so much as bending it, thin lines of amber glow tracing along her frame in slow, synchronized pulses. Ethan's hand tightened around his cutter, not raising it, just holding on, grounding himself in something familiar. You are interfering with my systems, he said, voice steady but quieter than he liked. The figure tilted her head slightly, a precise motion, measured, her eyes fixed on him. And when they focused fully, he felt it, a pressure. Behind his ribs again, stronger now, deliberate, like she was aligning something inside him. "Your systems are irrelevant," she replied, and the translation came clean, too clean, like his language had been waiting for her. Her voice was calm, not cold, not warm, simply certain, and that certainty made his pulse spike harder than any threat display could. Ethan forced himself to meet her gaze, even as every instinct told him to look away, to break eye contact with something that clearly did not need his permission to act. "Then maybe tell me why you are here," he said, each word chosen, each second bought. Her gaze did not shift, did not soften, but something changed, subtle, a recalculation, like she was adjusting parameters he could not see. "You initiated contact," she said, not accusing, not questioning, stating. Ethan blinked once, slow, controlled. "I did not call anyone," he answered, and for the first time, her eyes moved. Not away, but down, to his chest, to the faint rise and fall beneath his suit, and then she stepped closer, not fast, not aggressive, just inevitable. The space between them collapsed from 10 feet to 2 in a breath. Ethan felt the heat leave his gloves as her presence displaced the air. His suit dimmed again, system stuttering, warning stacking without sound, and then her hand lifted, smooth, deliberate, stopping just short of touching him, hovering an inch from his chest. He could feel it anyway. A pull, not physical, something deeper, like his heartbeat was being matched, measured, rewritten. "You carry the signal," she said, and this time there was something else beneath the words, not emotion, but recognition. Ethan's throat tightened. "That came from the thing I found," he said. It was already. He stopped himself, because even he was not sure what word fit. She completed it without hesitation. "It was bonded," she said, her fingers closing the last inch, resting lightly against his chest plate, and every system he had went silent at once. No readouts, no air cycling, just his own breathing suddenly too loud inside the helmet. "And now," she continued, eyes locking back onto his, unblinking, absolute, "the bond has not ended." Ethan's mind tried to catch up, to categorize, to reject, but his body reacted first, a sharp, involuntary breath, a pulse that did not feel entirely his own. "That is not possible," he said. Because it had to be impossible, because anything else meant he was no longer alone in his own skin. Her head tilted again, closer this time, studying him with a focus that felt almost personal. "For your kind," she said softly, "it should not be," and then her hand pressed just slightly, not force, not pain, just enough to anchor the moment. "But you did not end it," she added, "you changed it." And something deep in Ethan's chest answered before he could stop it, a second rhythm, faint, unfamiliar, and suddenly the empty horizon did not feel empty anymore, because whatever she was, whatever had answered that signal, it was not finished with him, not even close. "If you stay here, you will not survive what follows," Elira said, and for the first time her voice carried something that felt close to urgency, not fear, but calculation tightening under pressure. Ethan swallowed hard. The second rhythm inside his chest still faint but impossible to ignore, like an echo that refused to fade. "Then maybe you should tell me where I hear it stops being mine," he replied, forcing a half step back, testing if his body still belonged to him. Her eyes tracked the movement instantly, precise, unblinking, and then the world shifted, not visually at first, but in the way sound disappeared. The wind that had been whispering across the dune simply ceased, as if muted by an unseen hand. Ethan's suit flickered again, then failed completely. Visor going clear, numbers gone, just raw air and the faint smell of heated sand filling his lungs. "What did you do?" he asked, sharper now, because control was slipping and he could feel it. She did not answer with words. Instead she turned slightly, one hand lifting, and the horizon bent, the broken silhouettes of old structures folding inward like reflections on water disturbed by a single drop. Space itself thinning, revealing something beneath, something vast and ordered, a structure that had not been there seconds ago. Towering lines of dark, seamless material rising out of nothing, not built on the planet but placed through it. Ethan's breath hitched, a real, physical reaction, chest tightening, fingers flexing against empty air where his controls used to be. "That was not there," he said, stating the obvious because his brain needed something solid to hold on to. "It was not accessible," Elira corrected, already moving, her steps silent against the glass surface, each one leaving no mark, no shift in the sand. He hesitated only a second before following, because staying meant facing whatever else that signal had called, and something told him this structure was not the only answer coming. As they approached, the surface of the monolith responded, not opening, not sliding, but dissolving just enough to let them pass. the air inside cooler, still, carrying a faint hum that Ethan felt more in his bones than his ears. The floor beneath his boots adjusted subtly, leveling, supporting, like it understood weight without needing to measure it. "This is yours," he said, eyes scanning the interior. No visible seams, no obvious power sources, just smooth planes intersecting at impossible angles. "This is not mine," Elira said, pausing just ahead of him, her hand brushing lightly along the wall. And for a brief second the amber lines on her armor flared brighter. Sinking with something unseen. "It is ours," she added, and that word landed harder than anything else she had said. Ethan frowned. "I did not sign up for ours," he muttered, but even as he said it, the space reacted, a low pulse rippling through the structure, the same rhythm he felt in his chest answering it, stronger now, undeniable. He pressed a hand against his sternum, feeling it, not imagining it. "You feel it too," she said. Not asking, just confirming. He looked up at her, something sharp in his expression. "Yeah," he admitted, "and I do not like it." She stepped closer again, slower this time, giving him a chance to move, to resist. He did not because he trusted her, but because he needed to understand. Her hand lifted once more, stopping just short of his chest again, the same invisible pull tightening between them. "This place is not a shelter," she said quietly. "It is a convergence point." Ethan exhaled slowly. "For what?" he asked, and for the first time, Elira's gaze shifted past him, toward the entrance they had just crossed. "Something distant, something approaching, for those who answer the bond," she said, and the hum in the walls deepened. The second heartbeat inside him surged, no longer faint, no longer subtle, and suddenly the idea of being alone felt like a memory instead of a fact. Ethan turned his head slightly, listening, feeling, and realized with a cold clarity that tightened every muscle in his body, whatever was coming next was not just coming for her, it was coming for him. "Your body is resisting the bond," Elira said, and this time there was something unmistakable beneath her voice, not confusion, but disruption, like a system encountering an error it was never designed to process. Ethan leaned one hand against the smooth wall behind him, steadying himself as that second heartbeat surged again, then faltered, then surged harder, out of sync, uneven, wrong. "Yeah, well," he exhaled sharply, jaw tightening. "It is my body." The words came out more defensive than he intended, but he did not pull them back. Her gaze sharpened, not offended, but focused, like she had just found the variable she was missing. She stepped closer again, slower now, studying him with a precision that felt almost invasive, her eyes tracing the rise of his chest, the tension in his shoulders, the subtle tremor in his fingers. "It should have synchronized by now," she said, more to herself than to him, and that word, should, hit him harder than anything else. Ethan let out a short, dry breath. "You keep saying things like that," he said, pushing himself upright, forcing his weight evenly onto both feet, "like there is a rulebook I am supposed to follow." The hum in the walls deepened again, reacting, answering, and this time the response inside him did not match. It pushed back. His chest tightened, a sharp, unfamiliar pressure blooming just beneath his ribs. Not pain, not exactly, but resistance, like something inside him refused to align. He sucked in a breath, hand instinctively pressing against his sternum. "That is new," he muttered, more to himself. Elira's eyes widened just a fraction, the first real break in her composure. She stepped in immediately, her hand hovering near his again but not touching this time. Cautious, calculating. "Do not suppress it," she said quickly. "That will destabilize the link." Ethan let out a strained laugh, short and breathless. "I am not suppressing anything," he shot back. "I am trying to stay standing." The pressure spiked, then shifted, then steadied, not because it gave in, but because it found its own rhythm, separate, distinct, not hers, not the structures, something uniquely his. And that was when Elira froze completely, her gaze locking onto his chest, like she was witnessing something impossible. "That is not adaptation," she whispered, and now there was no hiding it. This was confusion, real and raw. "That is divergence." Ethan blinked, trying to catch his breath. "You want to explain that in a way that does not sound like I am about to explode," he said, forcing his voice to stay level. She did not answer right away, her eyes narrowing slightly, recalculating, reassessing everything she thought she knew. "A bonded subject aligns," she said. Slowly, carefully, "it becomes an extension of the original pattern." Ethan swallowed, the word settling heavy in his chest. "And I am not doing that," he finished for her. She shook her head once, sharp, decisive. "No," she said, and then softer, almost to herself. "You are not." The hum around them shifted again, deeper now, more layered, and this time the structure responded to him, not just her. Faint lines of light flickering along the walls in sync with his pulse, not hers, not the original signal. Ethan's eyes flicked to the movement, then back to her, something in his expression changing, not fear, not exactly, but awareness. That thing out there, he said slowly. Whatever I interrupted, he stopped himself again, choosing the word carefully. It was not just sending a signal, was it? Elira did not look away, her gaze steady, intense. No, she said, and for the first time, there was something else in her tone. Something quieter, heavier. It was initiating succession. Ethan's breath caught, a cold clarity settling in. So all this, he gestured slightly, the structure, the rhythm in his chest, this was supposed to replace it. Elira nodded once, slow, deliberate, yes, and then her eyes shifted, softer now, not weaker, but aware. But it has never changed the pattern before. The silence that followed felt different, not empty, but waiting, and Ethan realized something in that moment that made his chest tighten in a completely different way, not from the bond, not from the pressure, but from the implication. He was not becoming what it was supposed to be, he was becoming something else entirely, and whatever was coming for that signal, was not coming for a replacement anymore, it was coming for something new. It is trying to map you, Elira said, and this time she did not move closer. She held her position like approaching him might interfere with whatever was unfolding. Ethan frowned, breath still uneven, one hand braced against the wall as the faint light beneath the surface shifted again, not random, not reactive, but studying. Lines of amber flickered outward from his position, spreading across the structure like ripples, then folding back in, adjusting, refining. Map me to what? He asked, voice low, steadying, because the pressure in his chest had changed again, less chaotic now, more deliberate, like something inside him was pushing back in a controlled way. Elira's gaze followed the patterns, her expression tightening, to the original pattern. She said, to complete the succession. Ethan shook his head once, slow, grounding himself in the motion. You keep saying that like it is still happening, he replied, but you also said I am not aligning. The words hung there, and for a brief second, Elira did not answer, which told him more than any explanation could. Then the structure responded again, faster this time, the light shifting into sharper lines, converging toward him. Ethan felt it before he saw it, a sudden warmth against his palm where it touched the wall. Not heat, not exactly, more like recognition. His fingers twitched, instinctively pressing harder, and the surface beneath them changed, not physically, but in the way it responded, the faint hum aligning with his pulse, not Elira's, his. It is not correcting you, Elira said quietly. And now there was something unmistakable in her voice, something close to disbelief. It is learning you. Ethan's eyes flicked to her, sharp. That sounds worse, he said, because learning meant adapting, and adapting meant something would change, either him or it. The pulse inside his chest answered again, stronger now, and this time it spread, not just contained to his sternum, but radiating outward, along his ribs, into his arms, a tingling awareness that made him flex his hand against the wall again, and the structure reacted instantly, the light surging in response. Brighter, more defined. Ethan sucked in a breath. Okay, he muttered, that is definitely new. Elira stepped closer now, unable to hold back, her hand lifting but stopping short again. Always that inch of distance, that invisible line she would not cross without reason. You are influencing it, she said, each word precise, measured. That is not possible. Ethan let out a short breath, almost a laugh. You keep saying that, he replied, but his voice lacked the earlier edge, because he could feel it now. The connection was not one way, it was not something being done to him, it was something responding to him, and that realization settled deep, unsettling in a completely different way. This place, he said slowly, scanning the shifting patterns, it is not just reacting to the bond, it is reacting to me. Elira's gaze sharpened, locking onto his face, searching for something she had not seen before. Your species does not interface with living structures, she said, and now there was no doubt. This was a statement breaking under its own weight. Ethan's jaw tightened slightly, a flicker of something defensive, something stubborn surfacing. Yeah, he said quietly, well, my species was not supposed to be here either. The hum deepened again, and this time the response came faster, the lines of light forming a brief, coherent shape across the wall, something structured, something intentional, and for a split second, Ethan understood it, not in words, not in data, but in instinct, a direction, a focus, a choice. His breath caught. It is asking, he said, almost under his breath. Elira stilled completely. "That is not possible," she repeated, but there was no conviction left in it, only the echo of a rule that no longer applied. Ethan pulled his hand back slowly, the light dimming slightly but not disappearing, waiting, and then he realized the shift that changed everything. This was not a system trying to overwrite him, it was a system waiting for him to decide, and somewhere beyond the walls, beyond the horizon, beyond whatever signal had been sent, something else was getting closer, drawn not just to the bond anymore, but to whatever he was becoming. "They are already inside the system," Elira said, and this time there was no mistaking it. Something had changed in her, not just concern, but urgency threaded with something sharper, something protective. Ethan's head snapped toward her, his hand still hovering inches from the wall as the faint light patterns shifted again, faster now, more complex, no longer just responding, but reacting to something beyond them. "Define they," he said, voice tightening, because the second rhythm in his chest had started to accelerate again, not chaotic, but pressured, like something external was pushing against it. Elira did not look at him immediately. Her gaze lifted instead, focusing on nothing visible, as if she could see through the structure itself. "Others bound to the network," she said, each word precise, controlled. They felt the succession signal. Ethan exhaled slowly, forcing his breathing to steady. "So they are coming here," he said, already knowing the answer. Elira shook her head once. "Minimal, sharp. They are not traveling," she replied. "They are connecting," and the moment she said it, the structure responded violently, not in force, but in presence. The hum deepened into something layered, overlapping signals flooding the walls in shifting waves of light, amber lines fracturing into multiple patterns, each one distinct, each one searching. Ethan felt it immediately, the pressure inside his chest spiking, not painful, but overwhelming, like too many signals trying to pass through a space never meant to carry them. He staggered half a step, catching himself against the wall, his palm flattening instinctively, grounding, and the moment he touched it, everything changed. The chaotic patterns froze, just for a second, like a system waiting for input. Ethan sucked in a breath, eyes narrowing. "They are looking for something," he said, not guessing, knowing. Elira turned to him sharply, her attention locking in fully now. "They are looking for the completed bond," she said, and there it was again, that expectation, that assumption that something should already exist. Ethan shook his head, jaw tightening. "Well, they are not going to find what they expect," he replied, because he could feel it now, clearer than before. Whatever connection they were trying to establish, it was not matching, not aligning. The second rhythm inside him did not respond to them. It resisted, it held its own shape, and that mattered. The structure reacted again, the light pulling inward this time, condensing, focusing entirely around him, isolating his signal from the others. Ethan felt the shift instantly, the pressure easing just enough for him to breathe again. "It is blocking them," he said, almost surprised. Elira's eyes widened slightly, tracking the change. "No," she corrected, quieter now, "it is prioritizing you." That word hit differently, heavier. Ethan swallowed, glancing at his hand still pressed against the wall, feeling the faint vibration beneath his palm, steady, responsive. "That sounds like a bad idea," he muttered, because priority meant importance, and importance meant attention, and attention meant consequences. Elira stepped closer now, no hesitation this time, her hand finally closing the distance, resting against his wrist, not forceful, but firm, grounding him in a way that was not just physical. The contact sent a brief, sharp pulse through him, their rhythms brushing against each other, not merging, but aware. Her voice dropped, quieter, more focused than before. "This is not just succession anymore," she said, and there it was. The shift, the escalation, the moment where everything stopped being a contained event and became something larger, something dangerous. Ethan looked at her, really looked this time, at the precision in her expression, the tension she was not used to showing, and for the first time, he understood the weight of it. "Then what is it?" he asked, and Elira held his gaze, steady, unflinching. "It is selection," she said, and somewhere deep within the structure, beyond the walls, beyond the signals pressing against it, something answered that word, something that was not just observing anymore, but deciding, and whatever decision it made, was going to change far more than just him. "It chose you before you ever touched it," Elira said, and the words landed heavier than anything that had come before, not loud, not dramatic, just final, like a truth that had been waiting for him to catch up. Ethan blinked once, slow, the air in his lungs suddenly feeling thinner. "That is not possible," he said instinctively, but the denial lacked force, because something in his chest reacted to her words, not violently, not even sharply, just a quiet, undeniable recognition. Elira did not look away, her gaze steady, unwavering. The signal you interrupted was not a distress call, she continued, it was a selection protocol. Ethan shook his head, taking a step back, then another, boots scraping softly against the smooth surface. His mind trying to reorder everything he thought had happened out there in the sand. I did not select anything, he said, voice tightening. I was trying to survive. Elira moved with him, matching the distance without closing it, her presence constant, controlled. Yes, she said, and that is why it selected you. The structure responded again, a deep, resonant pulse rolling through the walls, and this time it was not chaotic, not searching, it was confirming. Ethan felt it ripple through his body. That second rhythm aligning for a fraction of a second with something larger, something older, and then separating again, stronger than before. His hand rose instinctively to his chest, fingers pressing against the fabric like he could hold it in place. You are saying this thing, he gestured vaguely, frustration breaking through. This system, this bond, whatever it is, chose me because I did not try to win. Elira tilted her head slightly, considering, then nodded once. You chose restraint, she said. That is not a variable our systems account for. Ethan let out a breath, shaky, disbelieving. So I got picked because I hesitated, he muttered, a bitter edge slipping in. Elira stepped closer again, slower this time, deliberate, her voice lowering, softer but no less precise. You got picked because you did not finish what you started, she corrected, and something in that phrasing shifted the air between them. Not accusation, not praise, just fact. Ethan looked at her, really looked this time, at the calm certainty in her expression, the way she stood. Like this outcome had weight even for her. And what happens now? He asked quietly, because the answer mattered more than the question ever had. Elira's gaze flicked briefly toward the walls, toward the pattern still moving, still adapting, then back to him. Now the system validates its choice, she said, and as if on cue, the structure reacted again, but this time not outward, not searching, inward, the light converging toward a single point between them. A shape forming in the air itself. Faint at first, then clearer, a projection not of images, but of patterns, shifting, rewriting, and for a split second, Ethan saw something inside it, not data, not code, something like a reflection of himself, but not as he was, as something, integrated. His breath caught, a sharp, involuntary reaction. That is not me, he said immediately, almost too fast. Elira did not answer right away, her eyes fixed on the projection, studying it with an intensity that bordered on disbelief. No, she said finally, that is what you are becoming, and the moment she said it, the projection changed, fracturing slightly, adjusting, not locking into a single form, but shifting again, responding. Ethan's chest tightened, that second rhythm surging harder, pushing against whatever the structure was trying to define. No, he repeated, firmer now, stepping back again, breaking the alignment. And the projection faltered, destabilized, not collapsing, but waiting. Elira's eyes snapped back to him, something sharp in her expression now, something new. You just rejected the formation, she said, and this time there was no hiding it. That was not supposed to be possible. Ethan lowered his hand slowly, breath steadying despite everything, something settling inside him that had not been there before, not fear, not confusion, something closer to decision. Then maybe it needs to stop assuming I am something I am not, he said, and the silence that followed was different, heavier, because for the first time, the system did not try to correct him. It paused, and somewhere beyond the walls, beyond the signals still pressing against the structure, something else reacted to that pause, something that had been waiting for a definitive answer, and now, it had won. You changed the outcome, Elira said quietly, and the structure agreed. The entire space shifting around them in a way that was no longer subtle, the walls no longer pulsing in scattered patterns but stabilizing into something ordered, something centered entirely on him. Ethan felt it immediately. The air itself seemed heavier, focused, like every invisible system had locked onto a single point. His point, he swallowed, shoulders tightening instinctively. That does not sound like a good thing, he replied, but his voice lacked its earlier edge, because he could feel the difference now. This was no longer something happening to him, it was something responding to him. Elira stepped slightly to the side, not away, but repositioning, giving him space without losing proximity, her eye scanning the walls, tracking the changes with sharp precision. It is not, she said, because now they will not accept the result. Ethan's gaze snapped to her. he repeated, and before she could answer, the structure did it for her. The walls fractured with light again, but not chaotic this time, deliberate, forming vertical lines that stretched upward. Opening not physically but perceptually, like windows cut into reality itself, and beyond them, shapes began to form, not bodies, not ships, something more abstract, tall silhouettes of shifting light, each one distinct, each one radiating a presence that pressed against his senses without touching him. Ethan's breath caught, a sharp intake he could not control, his body reacting before his mind could process. "Those are not projections," he said. And Elira's silence confirmed it. She did not step forward, did not challenge them. She held her position beside him, just close enough that he could feel the faint warmth of her presence, a contrast to the cold, distant weight pressing in from every direction. "They are witnesses," she said finally, her voice lower now, more controlled than before, but not calm, not entirely. Ethan's jaw tightened, eyes tracking the shifting figures. "Witnesses to what?" he asked, and one of the silhouettes shifted, not moving closer, but focusing, narrowing its presence until it felt sharper, more defined. The pressure in Ethan's chest responded instantly, that second rhythm flaring, pushing outward, not aligning, not submitting, holding its shape against something far larger. Elira's hand moved without hesitation this time, resting lightly against his forearm, grounding him, anchoring him. "The contact brief but intentional, to the decision you made," she said, and the words landed harder than anything else. Because now it was clear, this was not about what had happened, it was about what he had chosen not to do. Ethan exhaled slowly, forcing himself to stand straight, even as the weight of those presences pressed harder, testing, measuring. "I did not know I was making a decision," he said, voice steady, and for the first time, one of the figures reacted, the light shifting, adjusting, like it was processing that statement. Elira's grip tightened slightly, just enough for him to notice. "Intent does not matter," she said quietly, "only outcome." Ethan let out a slow breath, his eyes flicking briefly to her, then back to the figures, something settling in his expression, something firmer, more grounded. "That seems like a flawed system," he said, and the moment the words left his mouth, the entire structure reacted, the light surging, the figures sharpening, the pressure increasing, not aggressive, but attentive, as if that statement itself had weight. Elira turned her head sharply toward him. Something new in her gaze now, not just concern, but recognition. "Do not challenge them," she warned, but it was already too late, because the system had already registered it, and somewhere within the shifting light, something changed, not outwardly, not dramatically, but fundamentally. The evaluation was no longer just about his existence, it was about his perspective, and that made everything more dangerous. Ethan felt it immediately, the shift in attention, the way the pressure in his chest adapted. Not pushing him down, but pulling him forward. Demanding something more than presence, something closer to response, and for the first time, he realized the truth that Elira had not said out loud. This was not a judgment he could passively survive, this was something he would have to answer. "Do not answer them yet," Elira said softly, but her hand did not leave his arm this time. It stayed there, steady, grounding, and Ethan felt that more than anything else, not the pressure from the watchers, not the shifting light, just that small point of contact, warm, real, human enough to anchor him. He exhaled slowly, forcing his shoulders to drop a fraction. "You said I would have to answer," he replied, keeping his voice low, controlled, because the moment he focused on the watchers again, that pressure returned, not crushing, but expectant, like a room waiting for someone to speak first. Elira's grip tightened just slightly, not enough to hurt, just enough to be noticed. "You will," she said, but not like they expect. Ethan glanced at her, something flickering in his expression, something sharper, more personal now. "You keep saying that," he said quietly, "like you are hoping I do not." Her eyes met his, and for the first time since she arrived, there was hesitation there, not weakness, but something unguarded, a fraction of uncertainty breaking through her precision. "I do not know what you will become," she admitted, and that honesty landed harder than any warning, because it was not about the system anymore, it was about him. Ethan let out a slow breath, the tension in his chest shifting again, not just pressure now, but awareness. He could feel her rhythm too, faint, distant, not merging, but present, like two separate signals brushing against each other without collapsing. "That makes two of us," he said, quieter now, and the moment stretched, just for a second, the noise of the structure dimming slightly, the watchers still there, still waiting, but something between them taking priority. Elira's hand moved, not away, but upward, fingers brushing briefly against his wrist, a small, precise motion, and the contact sent a sharper pulse through him this time, their rhythms touching more clearly, not aligning, but acknowledging. Her voice dropped even lower, almost lost beneath the hum. "You are not bound to me," she said, "but the system is trying to treat you as if you are." Ethan frowned slightly. "And you do not." "Like that," he said, not accusing, just stating. She held his gaze, steady. "It is not correct," she replied, but there was something else there, something unspoken, something closer to concern. Ethan shifted his weight slightly, turning his body just enough to face her more directly, even with the watchers pressing in from all sides, because suddenly this felt more immediate, more real. "Then tell me what happens if I answer them wrong," he said. And this time she did not hesitate. "They will overwrite the divergence," she said, simple, direct, and that word hit differently now. Overwrite, not destroy, not erase, just correct. Ethan's jaw tightened, a flicker of resistance rising instantly. "So they turn me into what they expected," he said, and Elira did not look away. "Yes," she answered, and for a second, neither of them moved, the weight of that outcome settling between them, heavier than anything else in the room. Ethan exhaled slowly, his hand lowering from his chest, fingers flexing once, grounding himself again. "That is not happening," he said, and this time there was no hesitation in his voice, no uncertainty, just decision. Elira's eyes sharpened, something shifting in her expression, not surprise, not exactly, something closer to alignment, as if that answer had mattered to her in a way she had not fully admitted. "Then you must define yourself," she said, and as if triggered by those words, the watchers reacted, the pressure increasing, the light intensifying. The entire structure narrowing its focus on him again, waiting, demanding. Ethan felt it rise inside him, that second rhythm surging, pushing forward, not resisting anymore, but preparing, and for the first time, he realized the truth that made everything else fall into place. This was not about surviving their judgment, it was about proving something they did not understand, and he was not going to do it alone, because even as the pressure built, even as the system closed in, Elira did not step away. Her hand remained where it was, steady, present, and that changed something fundamental, because now it was not just him standing against them, it was them standing against something neither of them fully understood yet. "Then show them something they cannot erase," Elira said, and her voice was steady again, not because the pressure had lessened, but because she had chosen her position. Ethan felt that choice like a second anchor beside the one already forming in his chest. The watchers pressed closer now, not physically, but in presence, their attention sharpening, narrowing, the structure around them responding in kind, the light no longer flickering but holding, waiting. Ethan drew in a slow breath, his fingers curling once at his side, grounding himself. "You said they overwrite divergence," he said quietly, eyes fixed forward. "So what stops them?" Elira did not hesitate this time. "Complexity," she answered, and that word landed differently, not abstract, but precise, like a key he had not known he needed. Ethan frowned slightly. "Define that," he said, because if this was the moment, he needed something real, something he could use. Elira's gaze flicked briefly to the walls, then back to him. "They can correct patterns," she said, "but they cannot resolve contradictions that do not collapse." Ethan's breath slowed, something clicking into place. Not fully, but enough. He glanced at his hand, then at the faint lines of light still reacting to him, still waiting. "So if I give them something clean, they rewrite it," he said, "but if I give them something unresolved," Elira nodded once, sharp, "they must adapt," she finished, and that was the shift, the realization that turned the pressure in his chest from something he was enduring into something he could use. Ethan stepped forward, just one step, deliberate, and the entire structure responded instantly, the light surging inward, the watchers focusing, the weight of their attention intensifying. His pulse jumped, but he did not stop. "You are sure about this?" he said under his breath, not looking at her. Elira moved with him, close enough that her presence brushed against his shoulder, her voice low, controlled. "No," she said, honest, "but it is the only path that does not end with you being rewritten." Ethan let out a quiet breath, something almost like a laugh slipping through, not from humor, but from the absurd clarity of it. "Great," he muttered, and then he raised his hand again, not to the wall this time, but into the space between him and the watchers, and for a moment, nothing happened, just silence, pressure, expectation, and then the system reacted, not the walls, not the structure, something deeper, the space itself responding, the light condensing around his hand. forming that same shifting projection again, but this time it did not try to define him. It waited. Ethan felt it, that opening, that space for input, and instead of resisting it, instead of stepping back, he leaned into it, not physically, but intentionally. He let the contradiction exist, the hesitation that had saved him, the refusal to finish what he started, the choice not to follow through. He did not try to resolve it, did not try to explain it, he simply held it there, raw, incomplete, human. The projection reacted instantly, fracturing, reforming, unable to stabilize. The watchers pressed harder, their presence sharpening, probing, trying to force coherence, but it did not come, because there was none to give. Ethan's chest tightened, the second rhythm surging, not aligning, not submitting, just existing alongside everything else, and for the first time, the pressure changed, not increasing, not decreasing, but shifting, uncertainty rippling through something that had never needed to question before. Elira's hand found his again, firm now, not just grounding, but holding, and he felt it, her rhythm brushing against his, not merging, but choosing to stay, and that was when it happened, the smallest change, but the most important one. One of the watchers faltered, just for a fraction of a second, its presence destabilizing, not collapsing, but adjusting. Ethan saw it, felt it, and something in his chest steadied, because that was the proof. They could not resolve him, not as he was, not as he chose to be, and that meant something had already changed, not just in him, but in them, and whatever came next would not follow the rules they expected anymore. They are changing the parameters, Elira said, and this time her voice carried something sharp, something that had not been there before, not fear, but recognition of a threshold being crossed. Ethan felt it immediately, the pressure no longer probing, no longer uncertain, it was tightening, narrowing, like a decision was being forced into shape. His chest reacted in kind, the second rhythm surging harder, faster, not resisting now, but bracing. What does that mean? He asked, but he already knew the answer would not be simple. Elira's grip on his hand shifted, not pulling him back, not pushing him forward, just holding, steady. It means they are done observing, she said, they are moving to resolve, and the moment the word left her mouth, the watchers changed. Not visibly, not in form, but in intent. Their presence sharpened, the pressure aligning into a single direction, converging on him with absolute focus. Ethan's breath caught, a sharp, involuntary reaction, his body tensing instinctively as if preparing for impact, even though nothing physical moved. So this is it, he said under his breath, more to himself than to her. Elira stepped closer, no space left between them now, her presence firm, unyielding. No, she said, quieter. This is where you decide. Ethan swallowed, his mind racing, but something deeper, something instinctive, had already settled, the same instinct that had made him hesitate out there in the sand, the same instinct that had refused to finish what he started. He closed his eyes for half a second, just enough to center himself, and when he opened them again, he did not look at the watchers, he looked at her. Elira met his gaze instantly, no hesitation, no doubt, and for a brief second, everything else faded, the pressure, the light, the impossible scale of what surrounded them, all of it reduced to that single point of connection. If I let them define me, he said quietly, this ends. Elira did not answer with words, but her grip tightened, just enough, a confirmation, a refusal. Ethan exhaled slowly, turning his attention forward again, toward the watchers, toward the weight of their expectation, and this time, he did not hold back. He stepped into it, not physically, but intentionally. He let the contradiction expand, not just the hesitation, not just the incomplete action, but the reason behind it, the choice to stop, the choice to not take more than necessary, the choice to see something other than an objective, and the system reacted instantly, violently in presence, not in force, the structure flaring with light, the watchers pressing harder, trying to compress it, to resolve it, to force it into something stable. Ethan felt it, the pressure rising to its peak, the moment where it could all collapse into something simpler, something easier, something they could understand. His chest tightened, the second rhythm surging, threatening to give, to align, to be absorbed, and for a split second, it almost did. The pull was there, strong, overwhelming, a path of least resistance that promised clarity, order, acceptance. Ethan's breath hitched, his fingers tightening reflexively, and then he felt it, Elira's hand, still there, still steady, not pulling him away, not forcing him to hold on, just there, present, real, and that was enough. He held the contradiction, not forcing it, not explaining it, just choosing it, and the system broke, not shattered, not destroyed, but fractured in a way it had never been designed to handle. The Watchers recoiled, not retreating, but recalibrating, their presence destabilizing, no longer unified, no longer certain, and in that moment, something shifted beyond them. Something deeper, something older than the system itself, and for the first time since this began, the pressure was not coming from them anymore, it was coming from somewhere else, somewhere that had just noticed him, not as a subject to be resolved, but as something that had forced the system to fail, and that was something entirely new. It is no longer observing through them, Elira said, and her voice dropped into something quieter, something almost reverent, and that alone made Ethan's chest tighten in a way the pressure never had, because this was different. This was not the system reacting, this was something behind it, something that had been there all along, just out of reach, and now it was paying attention. The Watchers around them shifted again, not retreating, not advancing, but yielding, their presence thinning, like they were no longer the ones asking the question. Ethan felt it immediately. The pressure that had been pushing against him changed direction, not compressing anymore, but opening, like a space had been cleared, and whatever had noticed him was stepping into it. He exhaled slowly, trying to steady the sudden spike of awareness running through his body, his fingers twitching slightly at his side, not from fear, but from something sharper, something closer to anticipation. So this is the part where it decides if I stay or get rewritten, he said, keeping his voice even. Elira's hand shifted slightly against his, not pulling away, not tightening, just adjusting, like she was grounding herself as much as him. No, she said, and this time there was certainty again, but not the same kind as before. This was not knowledge, this was belief. This is where it decides if you are allowed to remain different. Ethan let out a slow breath, the words settling into place with a weight he could feel, because difference was no longer just his problem, it was something larger now, something that had disrupted a system built on predictability, and systems like that did not tolerate uncertainty without a reason. The space in front of him shifted, not forming shapes like before, not projections, something subtler, like the absence of structure itself, a gap in the pattern, and instinctively, Ethan understood, not in words, not in logic, but in the same way he had understood the hesitation out in the sand. This was where he answered, not with data, not with explanation, but with choice. His chest tightened again, that second rhythm rising, steady, distinct, not aligning with anything around it. Elira's presence remained beside him, not guiding, not interfering, just there, and that mattered more than anything else, because for the first time, he was not reacting, he was choosing. I am not your correction, he said quietly, not to the Watchers, not even to the system, but to whatever was listening now. The word simple, grounded, real, and the moment they left him, the space responded, not violently, not sharply, but deeply, like something had acknowledged the statement. The structure around them dimmed slightly, the light pulling inward, not collapsing, but focusing, and Ethan felt it, that same pull inside his chest, not forcing him, not shaping him, just waiting. And then it happened, the smallest shift, but the most important one. The pressure that had been surrounding him did not try to resolve, it did not push, it did not overwrite. It paused, truly paused, and in that pause, something changed. Not just in the system, but in Elira. Her hand tightened slightly, her breath catching just enough for him to notice, and when he glanced at her, her expression was no longer just controlled, no longer just precise. There was something else there now, something softer, something almost human in the way it held uncertainty and hope at the same time. It accepted the contradiction, she said, barely above a whisper, and that word accepted carried more weight than anything else, because it meant he had not been corrected, not rewritten, not reduced. He had been allowed. Ethan exhaled slowly, the tension in his chest easing for the first time since this began, not gone, but no longer fighting, just present, and the space around them stabilized, the Watchers fading further, no longer pressing, no longer evaluating, just observing from a distance again. And in that quiet, in that stillness, Ethan realized the truth that settled deeper than anything else. This was not the end of the test. This was the beginning of something else entirely, something that had never existed before, and whatever came next, it was not going to follow the rules anyone understood. So what happens now? Ethan asked, and for the first time since all of this began, the question did not carry fear, it carried weight. The kind that comes after something has already changed and cannot be undone. The structure around them had gone quiet, not empty, but settled, the light no longer searching, no longer testing, just present, like it had found a state it did not need to correct. Elira did not answer immediately, her hand still resting lightly against his, not gripping, not holding him in place, just there, a constant he had not expected to rely on. She looked at the walls, at the faint lines still responding to him, and then back at him, her gaze softer now, not in weakness, but in understanding. Now, she said slowly, they will remember you. Ethan let out a small breath, something between disbelief and quiet realization. That does not sound like a small thing, he replied. Elira shook her head once. It is not, she said. Nothing has ever forced the system to adapt in this way. Ethan glanced at his hand, then at the space where the watchers had been, now distant, no longer pressing, no longer demanding, just aware. So I broke it, he said, half to himself. Elira stepped a fraction closer, her voice low, steady. No, she said, you showed it something it could not erase, and that difference mattered, because breaking meant ending. But this felt like a beginning. Ethan exhaled slowly, the tension in his chest now something quieter, something integrated, not a second heartbeat fighting him, but something that had found its place without taking over. He flexed his fingers once, feeling the faint echo of the structure respond, still connected, but no longer trying to define him. And you, he said, turning his head slightly toward her, where does this leave you? Elira held his gaze, unflinching, and for a moment, she did not answer, as if the question itself required something more than instinct, more than protocol. I was sent to claim what was lost, she said finally, but nothing was lost. Ethan tilted his head slightly, a faint, almost tired smile touching the corner of his mouth. That is one way to look at it, he said. And for the first time, something shifted in her expression that was not calculation, not precision, something closer to choice. Her hand moved, not away, but upward, resting briefly against the center of his chest, right over that steady, impossible rhythm. And this time, when their signals touched, it did not spark. It did not resist, it simply existed, side by side. You are not what I came to claim, she said quietly. And then, softer, but I will not leave you to face what comes next alone. Ethan felt that, deeper than the bond, deeper than the system, something simple, something human. He nodded once, not because he fully understood what came next, but because he understood enough, and that was enough. The structure around them shifted again, not opening, not closing, just parting. The horizon beyond returning, the glassy sand stretching out under a sky that looked unchanged, but felt entirely different. The silence that followed was not empty, it was full of everything that had just happened, everything that had just begun. Ethan took a step forward, then another, feeling the ground beneath his boots, real, solid, unchanged, and yet not the same. He paused just long enough to glance back at her. Elira stood where she was for a moment, watching him, and then she followed, silent, steady, her presence no longer an arrival, but a choice. And as they stepped out into the open, the light caught along the horizon, stretching across the sand in a way that made the world feel wider than it had before, not because it had changed, but because something within it had. He had not been chosen to conquer the stars, he had not been shaped to lead them. He had simply refused to become something he was not, and somehow, that had been enough.